Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Billy Napier, the Florida Gators, wrapping up fall camp, completing their last scrimmage of fall camp before they kick off against the Miami Hurricanes. And you're continuing to hear, at least in my opinion, some fascinating names emerge as projected difference makers for this Florida Gators program coming out of fall camp. Want to get into some of the names that have me most excited heading into 2024. Now, before we get into it, and as always, one and most importantly, to the Florida fans, would love to hear the names that are getting you most excited heading into 2024. We said this 3 weeks ago when Florida was kicking off fall camp, but what makes this program so excited heading into fall camp in 2024 is there's a ton of young talent that are not necessarily proven difference makers in the SEC, but potentially could be in 2024. And we're starting to hear some of those names. So would love to hear the names that are exciting you guys the most. Of course, if y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. To the Florida Gator fans all off season long, the amount of support y'all have shown, whether we're talking recruiting preview in 2024, it's been amazing. Appreciate you guys. And without further ado, let's get into this one. And I want to start in the secondary where, and we talked about this a lot in the offseason. This Florida secondary last year struggled because they were just flat out young. And you take a look at starting at times true freshman safeties in Jordan Castell and Bryce Thornton, Devin Moore, a guy that was a true sophomore. I mean, Jason Marshall felt like he was the veteran of the group. He was only a third-year player. And so a lot of the struggles that I think Florida went through really on the defensive side of the football as a whole, but specifically in the secondary, had a lot to do with just being young and inexperienced. What does Billy Napier, the Florida Gators, go out and do? Go grabs Asa Turner, guy that's a redshirt senior, has played a ton of football coming from a Washington Huskies program that just competed for a national championship. You're bringing DJ Douglas, another redshirt senior, that's played a lot of football. Couple of names that are standing out for me. I do want to start with DJ Douglas, who just hasn't garnered as much buzz as I was kind of expecting in the spring and early in fall camp. It sounds like DJ Douglas is starting to kind of hit his stride. I think why that's so important for Florida is DJ Douglas is a dude that could play both the safety spots, could also play that star position. There's a lot of versatility that DJ Douglas brings to this Florida Gators defense. And we said when he committed to Florida out of the transfer portal, this kid's a perfect fit in terms of what Austin Armstrong wants to do. To hear DJ Douglas emerge, and we're not sure if he's going to start for Florida. We know he's going to play a lot. Having that utility piece in the back end that's experienced, that's a veteran, that can do a lot of different things, I think that's a really big storyline. I think secondly, Jason Marshall. Jason Marshall is a very contested player within this Florida Gators fan base. We've talked a lot about him this summer. The thing that I want to highlight is the word consistency. When you hear Jason Marshall flash in fall camp, it has a lot to do with him playing consistent football, which was the biggest flaw that he had his junior year. You go back to Jason Marshall Jr. during his junior year, there were a lot of good reps on the film, but there were also a lot of bad reps. And when you're playing that cornerback spot, you can't have those really bad reps that lose you football games. To hear Jason Marshall Jr. is starting to put it together from a consistency basis, that's a really big storyline because we all know this is an NFL talent at the cornerback position that just needs to find a little bit more confidence and consistency. I think there's a realistic possibility that Jason Marshall emerges as one of the better cornerbacks in the SEC. We know he has that caliber of talent. Now we just got to see it on the football field going into year 4, year 2 of the Austin Armstrong defense. I think there's reason to believe that Jason Marshall could be that guy. Last guy I wanted to shout out, Gregory Smith. We saw 2 true freshmen at the safety positions last year, and Bryce Thornton and Jordan Castell have really, really good seasons. Gregory Smith might be the most physically gifted out of all of those safeties that we just talked about. It sounds like he's starting to put it together as well. Look, Florida's not afraid to play true freshmen, young cats in the back end. If Gregory Smith kind of emerges as a guy, I think that could be an exciting storyline as well for the Florida Gators. Now, sticking on the defensive side of the football, this might be the storyline that excites me the most. Actually, probably the second storyline that excites me the most. That's the emergence of the young linebackers. Pup Howard coming in. And we knew, you go back to the film of Pup Howard in 2023 at South Carolina, this was a kid that looked like an SEC linebacker, moved like an SEC linebacker, didn't quite play like an SEC linebacker. You could tell between the ears that game was really fast for him, wasn't really seeing the field as well as you would expect. He was a true freshman, so you're not necessarily expecting him to kind of put it together and have all those instincts. That being said, that was kind of the aspect of Pup Howard's game that left a little bit to be desired. We kind of said when Pup Howard committed to Florida, if he puts it together between the years, I mean, him and Shamar James could be an elite linebacker duo within this Florida Gators defense. It sounds like Pup Howard's starting to take those steps, so that excites me a lot. And then secondly, Miles Graham. Aiden Child's coming in late. I expect him to be good, but because he got in the summer, I would be surprised if he played a significant role as a true freshman. Miles Graham coming back from the injury, he sounds like he's going to be a guy that plays for the Florida Gators as well. I think this linebacker room has the potential to have a massive step in the right direction in the 2024 season, but the young linebackers, guys like Pup and Miles Graham starting to stand out. That's really exciting, not only for 2024, but you kind of look at the tenure of Billy Napier. One of the things that we are looking for the most is this young talent taking those steps, showing that player development. And I think Pup Howard, Miles Graham are two guys that we are certainly looking at in the 2024 season. Going to the defensive line, got to talk about Cam James. I think one of, if not the single most reason that Florida takes a step in the right direction will be contingent on the development of TJ Searcy, Kelby Collins, and Cam James. Do those guys become difference makers for Florida on the defensive line? That might be the biggest storyline for this Florida Gators defense. You have to replace a guy in Princely U who, although was extremely inconsistent in terms of his assignments, there's no denying that he was by far the best pass rusher within this Florida Gators defense. We have to figure out where that production is going to come from. You have guys who are veterans who have been within this program, Justice Boone and Tyreek Sapp, who I think are really good football players, but I think the best version of this Florida Gators defense is when TJ Searcy or Cam James or Kelby Collins kind of put it together. And it sounds like Cam James might be one of those guys on the edge at that jack linebacker spot potentially that kind of puts it together for Florida. Now, moving over to the offensive side of the football, I think the biggest question continues to be the offensive line, where they went to the transfer portal, revamped it to a significant extent. I think you feel, at least personally, really good about the inside of the offensive line. I think one of the things that makes me feel really good is Rod Kearney starting to put it together at one of the guard spots. It sounds like he's going to be a guy that's going to play for Florida, whether he's a starter, whether he's a guy that you kind of rotate in. Roger Kearney, Najee Harris, those guys are what Billy Napier wants on the offensive line. Those big, physically imposing offensive linemen that can move people off the line of scrimmage. To hear Rod Kearney kind of putting it together, that excites me. I think the big question continues to be at the tackle spot. Brendan Crenshaw-Dixon, Austin Barber, and Devin Manuel. We're going to find out real quick. It's hard to kind of gauge what that tackle play is going to look like during fall camp. We're going to find out real quick against the Miami Hurricanes if they are an SEC caliber offensive tackle unit. That's probably the biggest question mark for this Florida Gators program. A lot of things that are coming out of Florida's fall camp is that they're trying to push the ball down the field a little bit more. Something that we kind of all banged the table for in the 2023 season. Once Graham Mertz emerged as an SEC quarterback that can win you football games, we started to say, hey, let's put a little bit more on Graham Mertz's plate. A lot of y'all in the comment section had some really insightful takes in terms of, hey, I don't think it has much to do with Florida not having confidence in Graham Mertz. I think it has a lot more to do with the offensive line holding up in pass protection for some of those longer route tree concepts to develop. So we kind of think and know that Graham Mertz can push the ball down the field. He has some weapons, guys like Tremere Dike or Aiden Mizell emerging in fall camp that can access that deeper third. I think the big storyline for Florida in terms of becoming a more explosive offense, attacking down the field a little bit more, probably comes to the offensive line and can they hold up in pass protection as opposed to Graham Mertz and the wide receivers being able to access the deeper third. I think the last big storyline is Graham Mertz, Arlis Boardingham starting to become a connection that's going to be dangerous. Arlis Boardingham is such a fascinating player that he's come on a lot faster than I would have expected from him coming out as a high school recruit who was, kind of an undersized guy that was a hyper athletic dude. He's put on that weight. I think he showed that he can hold up in that run blocking department, but we always knew that he was going to be one of those dynamic pass catchers that could work the middle of the field with that catch radius and the athleticism that he has. going into his third year, that's when you normally see tight ends kind of reach their peak and you kind of put it all together, so to speak. And it sounds like Graham Mertz and Arliss Boardingham, that connection is starting to become really exciting. If Arliss Boardingham can be a guy, I think that helps Florida a lot, but I think specifically in the red zone. You know what I mean? When you get those throwing windows that are a little bit smaller, there's a little bit less space for guys like Eugene Wilson to operate. Do you have some of those pass catchers who are big bodies that can make plays in some of those contested, smaller throwing windows? If Arliss Boardingham puts it together, I think that's a big time story for this Florida Gators program. That's kind of what we have coming out of fall camp, kind of tight-lipped coming out of the Florida Gators program. Try to compile as many names that I thought we could talk about. We'll shut it down there. Again, appreciate you guys rocking with the fellas. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later.